Hey everyone, welcome to another car review. Today we're going to take a look at the 2020 Toyota GR Supra, also known as the Mark V, one of Horizon 5's starter cars and a new addition to the series. Now the name Supra is one of the most recognizable names in the car world, largely owing to its legendary appearance in Fast and Furious. But the Supra has been around long before the movie, originally appearing as essentially nothing more than a sporty trim package for the Toyota Celica. Yes, the Supra was originally the Celica Supra, or Celica XX in Japan, back in the late 70s. In 1986 though, with the release of the Mark III or A70 Supra, the ties between Celica and Supra were officially cut. The Toyota Supra became its own model, and the Celica went front-wheel drive. The Mark III Supra was a strong performance car in its own right, but of course heavily overshadowed by its younger brother, the Mark IV. This is the Supra everybody knows and loves, equipped with the ever-famous 2JZ engine, and it was manufactured all the way into the early 2000s, being stopped in 2002 due to stricter emission standards. The Supra, the iconic tuner car of the 90s, was no more. History became legend, legend became myth, and for 1.5 decades, the Supra passed out of all affordability. But then, something happened that the Supra fans did not intend. It was picked up by the most unlikely manufacturer imaginable, BMW, in the form of the Z4. In 2019, Toyota partnered with BMW to bring back the Supra, this time with a chassis and engine borrowed from the Z4. Now, partnering with other manufacturers isn't new for the Supra. The JZ engine was in fact a collaboration with Yamaha, but this time around, they might have copied the homework a bit too much. Let's find out and take the Mark V Toyota Supra out on the road for a test drive to see if it's worthy of that Supra badge. Alright, first things first, let's take a moment to listen to the engine. What you're hearing there is BMW's B58 straight 6 engine, tuned by Toyota to output just over 330 horsepower. And it sounds pretty good. Being one of Horizon 5's starter cars, you know they wanted to make sure they were putting their best foot forward, and as far as audio and visual quality goes, they did. The Supra both sounds and looks phenomenal in Horizon. And it drives pretty well too. It has impressive stock grip, you can maintain some pretty fast corners without kicking the rear end out, but if sliding is more your style, it's very controllable in drifts as well. The power band is really smooth, so you don't get surprised by wheel spin when you don't want to, and even though the stock Supra sits at only 731 PI with its 335 horsepower, it feels quick from a straight dig. I usually use these test drives to think about what could use some work and what we could improve upon, or things I want to maintain in the final build, but with this Supra, I just want more of this. Scale everything here to the top of A-Class, and that's the build to me. I really enjoy how this car handles in Horizon, so I don't want to change too much by going into S1. Let's shoot for an A-Class road build for our Mark V. First things first though, let's check out what customization options we have. Starting with engine swaps, we have plenty of options from an inline 4 all the way up to a V12, but we keep things stock around here. And you'll also see we've got a wide body kit option as well, an HKS kit. What's interesting about this is that it doesn't affect PI, at least from stock, at all. It does add about 65 pounds of weight, but that wider wheelbase and ability to fit wider tires is going to be hard to pass up. If you don't want to fit the wide body though, there is also a Toyota Aero package for the car that looks pretty dang good, and a nice selection of wings, including 2 adjustable aero options that are not the default Forza aero. Moving over to tires, we have a stock sport compound and can fit up to 315s in the rear without wide body, but fitting the HKS kit will unlock up to 335s while taking away our track width option. Everything else is pretty standard fare, so I'm going to cook up an A-Class road tune for the Mark V and be back in a second. Alright, this one was tough, But we've ended up here with a tune for the Mark V Supra, putting down about 540 horsepower and weighing in at a slightly chonky 3,400 pounds. This was a fun but very challenging car to tune. At first, I leaned into full weight reduction, wide body kit, and semi-slick tires for a very handling-focused build. It drove beautifully, but the wide body kit added a lot of drag and hurt top speed significantly, making the car very uncompetitive in anything but tighter circuits. So I started experimenting with lower tire compounds, removing wide body, swapping weight reduction for more power, and so on. This is just one of those cars where no matter what you do, it always falls short a bit in some way, whether it be grip, cornering, acceleration, or top speed. So we've ended up here. A wide body build with no weight reduction on stock tires with plenty of power on the stock engine. Let's see how it performed around the test track. So coming into Albuquerque on a hot lap, the Supra has no issues here. Even though we're on the stock tires, that adjustable aero and wide body kit means that we can take this flat out no problem. Then coming into brake magic, where we often will get a little bit of understeer, that does absolutely not show itself here. The car turns in great into bug eye. Bug eye was a bit scary, to be honest, but if you're confident, you can take it quite quickly. Glacier corner is another spot where you often see some understeer, but again, the Mark V handles it beautifully. And then in the setup to Anchovy Apex, I often found myself underbraking and pushing wide a little bit, but that was largely driver error. Then coming into Kitagawa's hairpin, the Supra handles it beautifully. You of course do need to manage throttle a little bit coming out of the hairpin because it is rear wheel drive, but like I said in the initial test drive, not a problem in the Mark V. Just like with Albuquerque, the test of courage can be taken flat out with no real issues, getting you set up very nicely for confluence. But then Benji's Bends is where things start to take a bit of a turn for the worse, where some cars that have more front grip can take these two sharper right-handers with some good speed. The Mark V Supra definitely had to slow down here. However, coming into Puma Punt Pike, the car handles just fine. Again, there's a little bit of throttle management needed there, but nothing out of the ordinary for rear-wheel drive. As we come into the Bear Bend, this is usually a section that if you don't really understeer can be very, very flowy, and that definitely showed itself well in the Mark V. I actually almost got a little bit of excessive oversteer coming out of the end there. And then in the setup to Simon's Corner, this is a very, very challenging corner, but the Mark V actually does it very well. Again, just as long as you manage that throttle control. And then here we come to Icarus, where those top speed problems and high-end drag definitely come into play. You can see the car is definitely slowing down once we kind of get over that 100-mile-an-hour mark, but luckily we're not on this too long. We end up topping out around 150 coming into the Chicanish Inquisition. We made it through Chicanish with a minimum speed of about 56 miles per hour, and you can actually see I did tap that final tire stack, but no worries coming into Rush to finish out the lap, where the Supra made it around the test track in a pretty respectable 2:33.606. So this puts the GR Supra quite strongly in the top half of our A-Class test track leaderboard, not even 2 seconds behind my 911 Speedster, which on a 2.5-minute track is a pretty small gap. The 911 is a fast car, so any car that makes it under that 235-ish range for me is worth something. Let's see what the Mark V is worth though on the Hokie score. For the top half of the board here, I've never loved the look of the Mark V. It's good, not great to me, and I do think the HKS kit here is a bit too busy. But it's modeled beautifully within Horizon, and that's worth something, so it gets a solid 7. It also sounds great, has plenty of mod choice, and is a blast to drive. I think this is one of the more fun rear-wheel drive cars in the game. For the Supra's performance scores, drag and rally are passable, but not strong choices. This makes for a phenomenal drift car though, and due to how easy it is to drive, a phenomenal race car as well. For the online score, based purely on racing or rivals, I'd probably give it a 6, kinda low to mid off-meta range. But because it does perform so well as a drift car too and can set some solid scores in drift zone PR stunts, I think it's worth another solid 7. This also brings us to a flexibility score of 7. One of the stronger flex scores we've seen in the car review history, but for good reason. The Mark V's not terrible at anything, and it's quite good in some areas and has strong customization options. Now for style, I'm giving the Supra a neutral score of 0. It is a Supra, for whatever that's worth to you, and this Mark V has definitely polarized the real car world a bit, and it's also one of Horizon 5's starter cars. So it has a bit of a reputation as being a beginner car, something you move on from. So it gets a neutral score. Not uncool, but not especially cool in Horizon. This all added up brings us to a final Hokey score of 72 even. Folks, it's car review history because we have a new top score. Yes, the Mark V Supra just barely pushes ahead against the M5, Porsche 944, and Mitsubishi GTO to hit that 72. And honestly, I do think it deserves it. When I finished giving scores and saw where it sat here at the top, I initially hesitated. But after looking at the other cars, I realized it deserved that spot at the top. The GR Supra just hits so many points that an all-around good car in Horizon should hit. It looks good, it sounds good, it drives well and drifts well, and has a lot of customization. Playground Games wanted to put their best foot forward with this starter car, and I think they did. If you've moved on from the Mark V, maybe it's time to brush off that dust and take it out for a spin again. Thanks for watching another car review, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.